Well, the 2022 Philadelphia Eagles regular season has come to an end, and what a season it was. I'll go over some key stats that define these record-setting birds and hand out my team awards. This episode of the Philly Sports Spot YouTube channel starts right now. What's going on, everybody, and welcome into this edition of the Philly Sports Spot YouTube channel. I'm your host, Jordan Hirsch, and now, guys, before we get into this video, please make sure you like this video and subscribe to my channel with notifications turned on so you never miss another upload. Make sure you guys are also following me on Instagram. The link will be in the description below. So the regular season is over for the Birds, and before we shift into playoff mode, since the Eagles do have that first round bye this week, I want to look back at this regular season, and what a regular season it was. Franchise records set all across the board. Overall, NFL records were set by this team as well. And let's get right into some of these franchise record stats. They set the franchise record for total touchdowns with 59 total touchdowns, a very high scoring bunch. Rushing TDs, 32. That's a franchise record. Sacks, of course, that's probably the most notable one. At 70, Eagles just 3 away from setting the all-time sack record for the NFL. They come up a little short of that. They finish fourth, so the Eagles have the fourth most sacks in NFL history this year with 70, an absolutely dominant bunch, and that's with rushing mostly 4 guys the entire year. Obviously, Jonathan Gannon doesn't blitz all that much, so the fact that the Eagles were able to just get consistent pressure on every offensive line they faced while mainly rushing 4 guys the entire season is just extremely impressive. I mean, this is the best defensive line I've ever seen. Haason Reddick is an absolute beast. Javon Hargrave up the middle is unbelievable. Fletcher Cox had a great year. Josh Sweat a great year. Brandon Graham a great year. Eagles are the first team in NFL history to have 4 separate players each total at least 10 sacks in a season, those being Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat, Javon Hargrave, and Haason Reddick. Just an absolute, just incredible showing all season by the defensive line for the Birds. The Eagles, this is the first time in franchise history, if you take a look at the offensive side of the ball a little bit now, first time in franchise history to have a quarterback, running back, and wide receiver, all with at least 10 touchdowns, those being, of course, Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, the wide receiver, and the running back, Miles Sanders, getting 10 touchdowns plus this season. It's obviously the first 14-win season as well, and I know a lot of people are going to point to, oh, it's a 17-game season, only the second 17-game season ever for the NFL, but eventually all stats are going to be based on a 17-game season. The fact that the Eagles were able to put up 14 wins, obviously an extremely impressive feat there, and they probably would have had more if Jalen Hurts didn't miss those 2 games that he did with his shoulder injury. Eagles have 8 Pro Bowlers. That's the most in the NFL, and hopefully none of them will have to play in the Pro Bowl because hopefully the Eagles are playing in a much bigger game the following weekend, of course, in the Super Bowl in Glendale. Jalen Hurts' 13 rushing touchdowns are the most in franchise history by a quarterback. I mean, what a major step forward Jalen Hurts took this season. Obviously, if you think back to this time last year, the fan base was pretty much split 50-50, it seemed, on whether or not they believed Jalen Hurts was the guy, if he was going to be the franchise quarterback. And now I would be surprised if there is one single person that does not believe that he is this team's franchise quarterback. I know there's obviously going to be a handful of people out there that just want to hate. But I think Jalen Hurts has clearly made his mark on this league and on this team. He's going to be this team's quarterback for years to come. I think a $40 million plus contract is probably in his near future, probably this offseason. If the Eagles do look to extend Jalen, of course, they wouldn't be able to do anything until March when free agency opens and the new league year begins. But I think come March, he's going to be making some money. They're going to have to pay him. Obviously, just a major step forward he took this year. I mean, his work ethic is off the charts, even when he's injured. I mean, I don't know if anybody saw a little interview that he had, but last Monday, when Nick Sirianni basically said, oh, you don't have to come to practice, Oh no, like you can basically just stay home, have a chill day. Jalen Hurts, while injured, still wanted to head over to the NovaCare complex to watch film. I mean, his work ethic is unbelievable. He's a real student of the game. He just loves football, I think. And I think to have a guy like that as your team leader in the locker room and as now your franchise quarterback is a real plus to have. Alright, so I do want to get into my team awards for this outstanding season by the Eagles. I'm going to hand out 6 awards. I'm going to hand out an offensive and defensive MVP, an offensive and defensive newcomer of the year, so that would be first year Eagles, comeback player of the year, and coach of the year. So let's get right into it with my offensive MVP, and of course it's going to have to be Jalen Hurts. Again, I already touched on it, but what a major step forward he took. Not only is he my Eagles offensive MVP, but I think he should be the NFL offensive MVP. He won't because he missed a couple of games and Patrick Mahomes had a 5,000-yard season. So Patrick Mahomes is going to end up winning the NFL offensive MVP, I believe. But that does not matter for this because Jalen Hurts is my Eagles offensive MVP. Just take a look at some of these stats. 3,701 passing yards, 760 rushing yards as a quarterback, 35 overall touchdowns, 22 through the air, 13 on the ground. Of course, that franchise record that I touched on a bit earlier. Just 6 interceptions and a 66.7 quarterback rating, which was good for 4th overall in the NFL. I really can't say enough just about how impressed I am with Jalen Hurts and just how big of a, really not even a step I've been calling it, but how big of a giant leap forward he took this season. I do believe that if he stayed healthy the whole season and played all 17 games, that he would have been the league MVP. It's a shame that he had to miss those 2 games with the shoulder injury. But either way, he is my team MVP. He, of course, went 14-1 as a starter. That's just unbelievable. Especially coming off of a season last year where the Eagles just squeaked into the playoffs and really only got in, I believe, because of they had a relatively easy schedule. But Jalen Hurts goes 14-1 as a starter. Just unbelievable numbers all around for him, and that is why he is my offensive MVP. I want to take a look now at my defensive MVP, and that is going to be one Haason Reddick. 16 sacks, 5 forced fumbles, second in the league in sacks, and I believe tied for first in forced fumbles, tied for 2nd overall in sacks. He's probably a candidate for defensive MVP overall in the NFL. Don't know if he's going to get it. Joey Bosa and Micah Parsons both having outstanding seasons in their own right. But Haason Reddick, just what an absolute beast he's been all year. And you forget that the Eagles will use him in coverage, and he's not that bad of a coverage guy either. When the Eagles have lined him up more at defensive end recently, just because of how dominant he's been. But earlier in the season, remember, they were using him in coverage a lot more, and he was holding his own there as well. So you have a guy that is tied for 2nd in the league in sacks and can also cover some opposing teams' players. Just what an absolute beast on the defensive end. That's why he's my defensive MVP. Alright, moving on now to my offensive newcomer of the year. That's got to be A.J. Brown, setting the franchise record in receiving yards with 1,496. Broke Mike Quick's record in the final game against New York last week. 88 receptions for those 1,496 yards. 11 touchdowns for A.J. Brown. That's 17 yards per catch, which is just some unbelievable stats there. That was good for 4th in the NFL. Those 17 yards per catch. And what a just absolute luxury it was for Jalen Hurts to have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, for that matter, to throw to. But looking really at A.J. Brown, I mean, he is truly always open, and even when he's not open, he's still open. Because of just the amount of contested catches he was able to make this season. Obviously, he's probably the best wide receiver in the league when it comes to the slant route, and he was able to just make some of those catches in stride and take them for more than just a little 10-yard slant. He'll run that little 10-yard slant route and then turn it upfield and get an extra 20-25 yards. And he's also a threat to go deep on you and make those contested catches. If he's in one-on-one going deep, I mean, how many of those catches did he make this season where it looked like pretty much 95% of other wide receivers in this league would have no chance? A.J. Brown was able to haul those in. An absolute luxury to have on the offensive end. That's why he is my offensive newcomer of the year. Defensive newcomer of the year has got to be C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Obviously, a very late acquired, late in the preseason. Howie Roseman goes out and trades with New Orleans to bring in C.J. Gardner-Johnson, and all he does is finish the season with 6 interceptions, which is tied for the league lead despite missing 5 games. And if he was able to stay healthy the entire season, there's no doubt in my mind that he would have had the overall NFL record for interceptions this season. C.J. Gardner-Johnson, again, he's part of just Jonathan Gannon's overall defense, that shell coverage that he likes to play. C.J. Gardner-Johnson is a huge cog in that because he is just, I mean, you see, opposing quarterbacks rarely went deep against the Eagles, and I understand that's kind of what the shell coverage is supposed to do. But when you've got a guy back there like CJ, it's of course very scary for opposing quarterbacks to go deep on a guy like that, and rightfully so, just because of how many picks that he had this season. All right, I want to move on now to my comeback player of the year, and somebody I believe probably should be the comeback player of the year overall in the NFL, and that is one Brandon Graham. Tore his Achilles in week 2 last season, missed basically the whole season, and what does he do? Come back in his age 34 season and put up 11 sacks, one of those 4 Eagles to finish the season with 10 or more sacks. An unbelievable year by Brandon Graham. You see a guy who's getting up there in age and coming off of a really bad injury like the torn Achilles that he had, and he was able to come back and have his best season of his career. I mean, that's just unbelievable. Real props to Brandon Graham there and what he was able to do. And finally, my coach of the year. Obviously, so many coaches went into this season. I thought the coaching decisions were pretty much excellent all across the board. However, I've got to give it to Jeff Stoutland. Stoutland University proved well once again this season as the Eagles' offensive line was dominant, only allowed 44 sacks this season, and Lane Johnson allowed no sacks again. He hasn't allowed a sack since the 2020 season. That's just unbelievable. And even more unbelievable this year is that he didn't even allow a quarterback hit. And that's coming off of Jalen Hurts' blindside. An absolute luxury to have over there at the right tackle. Hopefully, he's good to go in the playoffs. I think it's going to be very tough for him to play through the injury that he is planning to play through. But either way, Lane Johnson was, of course, a huge, huge factor in the Eagles' offensive success this season. Really, the entire offensive line was. Jordan Mailata had another great season. Landon Dickerson took a big step forward. Jason Kelce was excellent, as always. Just an absolute overall great play by the offensive line this year, and that is why Jeff Stoutland is my overall coach of the year for this team. Obviously, huge shout out to all the coaches: Nick Sirianni, Jonathan Gannon, Shane Steichen, and everybody else for just coming up with great game plans, I believe, the whole year. And they were all obviously huge parts in the Eagles going 14-3. But I think Jeff Stoutland, just what he's done with the offensive line, really just overall the entire time he's been here, but especially this season, deserves this credit for my coach of the year. Alright, that is going to wrap things up for this edition of the Philly Sports Spot YouTube channel. Again, make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to my channel with notifications turned on so you never miss another upload. My next upload will come 2 days before the first Eagles playoff game. So if the Eagles play, once NFL releases their divisional round schedule, if the Eagles play Sunday, I'm going to come out with a video on Friday. And if the Eagles play Saturday, I'm going to come out with a video on Thursday. So make sure you guys have those notifications turned on so you do not miss that upload or any other upload. Make sure you guys are also following me on Instagram. The link is down in the description below, or you can just look me up. It's at Philly Sports Spot. That's PhillySportSpot. So just one S between sport and spot. And until next time, guys, let's go Birds. What a regular season it was, and it's time to continue that dominance in the playoffs next week.